As a fitness professional, you know the joy of helping others, and you know it's more than just fitness. We're training the whole person. Wellness coaching provides expertise that goes beyond fitness and nutrition. It's a holistic approach to helping others become their best selves while reaching their goals. To us, there's no greater joy than that. Join the fitness leader. Become a fitness leader. Become a certified wellness coach. Go to nasm.org/wellness.
Everyone, welcome to Strong Mind, Strong Body. I'm your host, Angie Miller, and this is part 2 of my series on simplifying your life, how to subtract more to stress less. So last week I did part 1 and I explored this whole art of subtraction, this transformative power of doing less and having less, and how embracing minimalism and reducing choices and slowing down can lead to a more fulfilling life. So if you missed that episode, I hope you'll go back and check it out. And in this episode, I want to go into part 2 of what that looks like to subtract and to minimize, but not from the outlook or the perspective of minimizing versus materialism, and not from the perspective of cutting back on choices, because I covered all that. Instead, I want to talk about something completely different. I want to talk about 2 concepts that I think are so simplistic and yet so powerful, and they really lend themselves to the art of subtraction, to stressing less, to slowing down, and to simplifying. So these 2 concepts are called the yes damn effect and the no yay effect. So stay with me. I think you're going to enjoy this if you haven't heard these before. And you know what? Even if you have, so many times I'll hear something that I might have heard a year ago or 10 years ago, and either I totally don't think about it anymore, or maybe I just want to hear a different perspective on it. So I hope that I can share with you a different perspective, and I hope that you can share with me what your thoughts are about this. So let's start with the yes damn effect instead of the no yay effect. So it's essentially, the yes damn effect is essentially that feeling of frustration that we get when we feel like we might have made the wrong choice. Or said another way, how we regret choices we may have felt very confident about making at the time that we made the choice. But then later, when it comes to the time that we're maybe making good on those choices, we feel like we have big regrets. So I'm going to give you an example. Let's say that you get invited to a party, a big event where you have to dress up, you got to go the extra mile, and it's this big see and be seen event. And maybe you're super excited and you're like, yes, I need something out of the ordinary and fun. And I want something where there's super interesting people. It's a few months away. So, of course, it sounds amazing, right? Because everything that's a few months away sounds amazing, doesn't it? And so, of course, you're excited and you sign up, you pay the ticket price or the dinner price or whatever it is. You put it on your calendar and you're all psyched out, right? You even look forward to it day after day. You're stoked. You're ready. So time passes as time does. The event gets closer, and pretty soon it's the next day. And maybe you don't have your gown or your suit or whatever it is that you were supposed to buy. Maybe you've had a rough week. Maybe it just sounds daunting and tiresome, which is the opposite of exciting and super cool, the way that it sounded 2 months ago. So your initial, yes, I can't wait to do this, your initial excitement and enthusiasm becomes, damn, why did I sign up? Why did I think this was a good idea? I mean, seriously, have I checked in with myself recently? So the yes damn effect really spotlights our tendency to say yes to things that are far off in the future, only to regret our choices later, even if the thing that we said yes to is by and large a pretty positive thing or a pretty positive situation. So, why do we do it then? What makes our brains do it? Because I know I'm not alone. I know I just talked about this with a friend the other night, how I had said yes to this big weekend and then it kept getting closer and closer. And I was like, oh my gosh, why did I say yes to going away this weekend? I've been traveling so much. But at the time, it sounded amazing. And that's really what inspired me to look this up because I'm like, I know I am not the only one who has these regrets. I deal with clients every day who have these regrets. But I honestly had never heard of it in this terminology or heard this used before. So I heard about it from Hal Hirschfield. He's a doctor. He's got a doctorate from Stanford. He's a professor of psychology at UCLA, or he was last I looked. And he even published a book called Your Future Self: How to Make Tomorrow Better Today. And he basically says, and I'm very loosely summarizing here, that we do it because we see our future self, possibly through a more optimistic lens, if you will. I like to call it my ideal self. you know, that self, the self that always has way more time, more energy, and more enthusiasm than the real me. That ideal self, like the bobblehead self that's on the shelf that I look at and I go, oh, yeah, that's the girl who's always like, yes, yes, yes. Her head's bobbing and she's always into everything. But I'm like, is that really me? So maybe it's the self that we aspire to be, but it leads us to make commitments that at the time hold a lot of appeal, but actually tend to clash with the reality of who we are. As the situation or the event gets closer, that reality sets in that maybe this isn't really who we are. And so, what do we feel? We feel stress. We feel regret. We feel frustration with ourselves. We might feel a lot of fear or a lot of worry. And it may even be that it wasn't even our ideal self. It may even be that that the you that you typically are would love a big gala or a big event. But as it gets closer, there's been a lot of things going on in your world, and you're like, it just doesn't sound good right now. Maybe 6 months from now or 6 months past, it would have. But right now, I've got a lot going on. So, the solution to the yes, damn effect is important to consider because here's the thing: we don't want regret to lead to self doubt. We don't want it to become where we don't trust ourselves. Like, I don't want that feeling where I feel like I let myself off the hook. We want to know that we can show up for ourselves and that we can count on ourselves. Because if we can't count on ourselves, who can we count on, right? We don't want to always second guess ourselves and think, gosh, every time I say yes to something, I bail. So there must be something wrong with me. I must be inherently flawed. Well, I never want you or any of my clients to get to that place. And frankly, I don't want to get to that place. So I think the important thing here is that we have to be intentional and mindful when we make commitments so that we don't have this effect of, oh, why did I say yes? And how come I'm always letting myself down? So, some of the ways and some of the stuff that I've read, and some of the things that I've even suggested to my clients, and some of the things that Hal Hirschfield says is, before you just blindly commit to something, check your calendar and your workload. Like, really look ahead. When you're going to put this gala on your calendar, look ahead to 3 months and go, okay, what's going to be going on in my life at that time? Do I have a big trip coming up around then? Do I have a big presentation? And so maybe it's not so much that you let yourself down. Maybe it's that you don't give yourself permission to really consider everything that would be going on in your life. Because here's the thing: I love to dress up. I love big events. But if I have a lot going on at the time, I don't love them. And so I have to be intentional about what I say yes to. And I have to check my calendar and go, well, I've got this big event in LA coming up where I'm going to be speaking. If there's a big thing right around that time, I'm probably not going to enjoy it or have as much fun or be very present. So, first, check your calendar so you don't blindly commit. Second, one of the suggestions was imagine the event is happening tomorrow or even next week. Would you still say yes? And for those of you who like kind of want to say yes to things, maybe you have FOMO, you don't want to miss out, or maybe you're always looking at your ideal self, really check yourself and say, if this were happening tomorrow, would I want to say yes? Is this really who I am? Or is this who I think I'm going to be a few months from now? Because chances are I'm going to be the same person I am today. Another suggestion is to weigh the pros and cons against whatever your current goals and values are. So maybe it is a big gala, maybe it is this amazing event, and maybe it would be a great see and be seen and a good networking event. But again, go back to what are your goals? What are your values? What's going on for you at the time that this big event is taking place? And giving yourself permission to say, well, there will be other big events. There will be other things that I can attend. And maybe that time is not my time. So, another way to avoid that whole yes, damn effect and all the regrets that go with it is to take your time when making a decision. Just pause, use the power of your breath. Rushing into a decision is more likely to lead to regret versus taking time to thoughtfully consider all your options. In other words, be aware and consider all the information before you make a choice, not just the facts of where and when, but your feelings and your gut. Because maybe your ideal self loves big, extravagant affairs, but maybe your true self really doesn't. Maybe your true self likes small, intimate gatherings, and that's okay. Because when you slow down and you take stock and you assess all of the things about the situation, you can be more guided. And guess what? Less regret, less guilt. And that alone is so invaluable because if there's one thing that I would like all of us to try to avoid is guilt and regret because that leads to shame. It's time sucking. It's energy sucking and it's soul sucking. We don't want to go there. We just want to be very guided in our decisions. So, again, another tip would just be to gift yourself space before saying yes. Maybe you don't say yes in the moment. Maybe you say, I need to think about it for a day or two before I commit. That way, you get to reflect on it in the morning, at night, when you're brushing your teeth, when you're driving in your car, and you really get to think about you in that situation and decide, is that me or is that the me I'd like to be? And then finally, last but not least, feel empowered to decline, right? Feel empowered to say no versus having regrets later and going into that guilt, shame, regret cycle. Give yourself permission to honor that it may not be the right time or just the right event. Life changes. So, worst case scenario, something comes up, you didn't say no, you decide it's not going to be your time or the time to do it. Give yourself permission to change gears too. It doesn't mean you're always going to do it. It just means you have to adapt to whatever's going on in your life. So, the moral of the story, that whole yes, damn effect tends to stem from this aspirational identity or this person that we aspire to be, our ideal or future self. You know, that self with endless energy and an infinite bandwidth of time. But really compare that with who are you at your core self? Because that's the you need to be true to. So I just want to reintroduce myself. I'm Angie Miller. This is Strong Mind, Strong Body. This is part two on my series of simplifying your life, the art of subtraction, so that you can stress less. So that was the yes, damn effect. And the second concept that I want to talk to you about is paralleling that with no, yay. Because the no yay effect is actually a powerful solution to turn the tables on yes, damn. Most of us learn the hard way, if all else, that saying no to someone or something is a yes to us. It's a yes to what we care about and what we love the most. We know that we can't do everything, and we know that we can't be everything to everyone. But saying no is so hard. Okay, maybe it's hard for me and it's not hard for you. I can tell you that saying no is incredibly hard for me. So here's the deal. The concept of no yay is so silly, but it honestly works. And I'm so excited because if you've never heard it, I hope you're as giddy as I am. And if you have, again, I hope I'm just giving you a different lens to see it through or a gentle reminder. So, what it is you say no to something. And then you go immediately to your calendar and you mark your calendar as if you said yes. So you put the reminder on your calendar, that future date with a note like, today's the day the gala would have happened. Or for me, it would be today's the day that chapter would have been due. So every time I say no to a writing assignment or a chapter or being, a content expert, I love that. Put it on my calendar, and then I'll be like, today's the day that would have been due, and I'm like, oh my gosh, that's amazing. I feel 10 pounds lighter not having the weight of knowing that I would have had to have been working on that for the past gazillion months, hours, and days. So you put it on your calendar. Like tonight would have been the big gala or event. And then when it comes to that day and you see the note on your calendar, you go, yay, I said no. Okay. I think it's amazing. I don't know if you're as exciting as I am, but it's your reward. It's your reinforcement that you did the right thing. It's a reminder of the value of your time. And this positive reinforcement that you're giving yourself is so empowering. It reminds you to trust yourself, to listen to your gut. And you know what? It also is kind of this gentle reminder that the world is still spinning on its axis. The world is still going around and around, even though you said no, and you're better because of it, right? The world didn't stop and pause because you said no to writing that chapter. You're not going to that gala or that event. It's still going to take place. Ideally, this positive reinforcement, the goal is that it makes it easier for you to say no to things and that you realize the power of being empowered, the power of having more joy, more time, and less stress just because you said no, a 2-letter word. So you get to choose when it comes to simplifying your life. Simplifying choices and decisions is super powerful. So if your goal, like mine, is to stress less, then subtraction is powerful. Subtracting yes and adding no may be one of the most powerful choices you make. So I'm glad that you joined me for part 2 on this series on simplifying your life, the art of subtraction. I hope that some of my tips give you the ability to stress less and be more present, to have less choices, to focus more on minimalism versus materialism, and to be able to say no when you need to. So I'm Angie Miller. Thank you so much for joining me on this Strong Mind, Strong Body episode, and I'll see you next week.